Welcome to TOMGIRL, where we talk all things sports, entertainment, fashion, and adventure. Today's guest is a New York Times best-selling author, adventurer, pilot, former firefighter, and true advocate for women and girls, teaching them how to live a gutsy life full of adventure. Welcome to the show, Caroline Paul.
I'm really excited. Thank you, JJ. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I am in awe of your spirit, your adventurous life, and just what you're doing now to advocate for girls, living a life like that as well. So I'm excited to hear more about your journey today.
Great. Yeah, me too. Let's talk.
All right. Well, you kind of got started on your own adventurous life at a really early age. Let's go back starting to when you were a little kid, kind of growing up with that adventurous spirit and talk about some of the fun stories that have kind of shaped who you are.
I mean, I think I grew up at a time when there was a lot of adventure to be had as a kid because we did what I would consider sort of people call it free range, pasture raised child rearing, where you basically let your kid out the door when it got light and you told them to come back at dark. And so yeah, we were really into adventure at a young age, even though my parents were not outdoors people. We just grew up in the country, so that's what we did.
Hmm.
And I have an identical twin and a younger brother, and so yeah.
One thing I read about you, I loved talk about your decision to try that you wanted to go break a Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah, my twin sister and I were like obsessed with, I think every kid was back then. It was this big, thick book. It had all these cool pictures of like the longest fingernails and, the tallest person. And that was kind of the height of like fame. It was obviously there was no internet, there was no Instagram influencers. If you could be in the Guinness Book of World Records, it meant something. And so my twin and I were obsessed with that. And but thing about me is I didn't really have any talents. So when I was 13, I think, I decided to set a world record in something that actually demanded no skill, which is crawling. And I thought it was going to be super easy because you think everything's easy when you're 13 if you just set your mind to it. And the record at the time was I get this confused, but I think it was 11 and a half miles or 12 and a half miles. And we thought this looked easy. I don't think I'd ever even walked 11 miles or 6 miles at the time, but for some reason it was just like, yeah, we can do this. So yeah, I set out and I did it. It actually taught me a lot. One of the biggest things it taught me was, first of all, it's really good to try something where nobody else does it because you're liable to succeed because hardly anybody does it. And that's kind of my mantra in life. But sadly, I did not succeed. I went 8.5 miles, which is still pretty freaking long. And like I say, I did a TED talk and I have that in the very beginning. It looked like a failure at the time, but when I look back on it, I see that it's far from being a failure. I had a dream and I set about doing it, even though of course we didn't train. But here's the irony, JJ, is that my twin sister, so I failed at this. Turned out my twin sister, who's an actress, she's actually an actress on the show Baywatch.
Oh, nice.
Baywatch was the number one show in the world. And she's in the Guinness Book of World Records as a result,
Oh no.
which was ironic and
Yeah,
hurts still to this day.
right. You set out to. Oh man,
Yeah.
they're just gonna have to find something else. There's got to
Got
be
to find
something else
something
out there.
else, man. There's still time. Still time.
I listened to that TED Talk you did, and there's something that I loved about that because it kind of is resonating in other women that I've spoken to it here, like former athletes. And, where there's this feeling of like, you feel like a failure. Like you said, you feel like you failed at that, but it wasn't until later in life that you realize, no, it definitely, I think it's a shifting that mindset of like us not beating down on ourselves sometimes. Like for me, I played college college basketball, and there's lots of times where I felt like I failed because I didn't get much playing time, and I didn't get like, but then later it took later to look at like, no, sometimes those things are a success because there was a lot I learned, and just even being on the team at a Division 1 level or things. So just kind of talk about maybe what we do to ourselves too as women with or girls, like sometimes that failure kind of shuts us down or stops us from trying new things because we're like, oh, I didn't do well at that. How's that kind of
Oh,
mindset
I'm really
shifted for
struck
you?
by the how we raise girls and boys differently. Girls are really raised, well, boys are encouraged, at least when I was growing up for sure, and really still, to go outside, try things, fail. And it was always sort of seen as, a rite of passage. So, and then girls, on the other hand, are really taught on a subliminal level to be perfect right away. And that's a bummer because none of us are perfect. And the journey is really what is important. I mean, it really is the things you learn along the way. And so that's why when I wrote The Gutsy Girl, which is a book for girls about the fun of getting outside,
Mhm.
the message really is there's no such metric as winning in the outdoors. It's just not a winning and losing situation. It is just always a journey and the fun you have along the way and the emotions you experience of exhilaration and fear and bravery and how you deal with that. And boys are given that early. So they learn risk assessment, they learn self-confidence and decision-making skills on their own. Whereas I see my peers and those younger than us, as we reach adulthood, we actually haven't often learned how to trust our own instincts, how to make our own decisions. And that really is something then we try to handle as we're older. And it's late. It's really late to do that. And just the outdoors is such a perfect training ground for all that. They did this really amazing study that I talked about in the TED Talk where they watched boys and girls on a playground when they were around 6. And the interesting thing about being 6 is that girls and boys are pretty much the same physically. Actually, girls tend to be stronger and more mature. But what they saw is that moms and dads would uh, they would encourage their boys to play on this piece of equipment. It was actually, ironically, a fire pole because I was a firefighter for many years. And if the boys were hesitant about it, they would push them to do it, and then they would push them to learn how to play on it on their own. Whereas the girls, they actually cautioned the girls against playing on it, and if the girls still wanted to do it, they would assist them. And so the messages start really early that boys, you should be trying, you should be doing it on your own, and girls, you're going to need help, and your decisions aren't necessarily as sound as you think they are.
Mhm.
And I was really struck by that. So, and I do think, going outside and learning risky play, which is the term for kind of a rough and tumble play where I mean, when I say getting hurt, I don't mean, of course, major head trauma, but yes, there is going to be some physical risk. But we encourage it in our boys.
Yeah.
Why don't we encourage it in our girls?
Yeah. When did you decide that you have the ideas to write these books or just get involved in kind of changing the stories and what we're speaking about with girls and women around these topics?
Usually there's like a seminal moment, but it's been building kind of for years. One of the things that happened to me was that a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, my girl is really she's really anxious, and I'm wondering if you could go in the water with her because I'd like her to swim better." And I was like, "Sure." This girl was awesome. She was, I think, 11 at the time. And I went in the water and we spent the afternoon. And I noticed, yeah, she was anxious. But what I noticed more was that her parents were anxious, that almost all the time they were cautioning her not to do things, to be careful, to watch out. And it started to make me anxious, honestly. And I really saw that we parent our girls in a way that we encourage fear in them instead of encouraging bravery, which is the flip side. It's not that you don't feel fear when you're brave, but when you encourage fear, what you're basically telling someone is not to engage. And um, and I think we do it with our girls to protect them. because we know that the world is dangerous for girls. Uh, but when you instill fear, what you're doing is you're not teaching them how to make decisions on their own, how to assess that dark alley and not walk down it. Don't rely on the only on the opinions of strangers. I mean, all the things that we're actually trying to protect girls from by being fearful, we is actually hurting them. Boys learn very early how to rely on their own spidey sense or their instincts or their confidence. And as a result, I think things are really different for them.
Hmm.
So most of my books are not about like fear doesn't exist. It's about let's lead with bravery because bravery opens up doors and opportunities, whereas fear does not.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your books. And I love those things, how you address that in them. You have a lot of bravery. Like you mentioned earlier, you were a firefighter before. Talk about how that experience has also kind of helped you, in your life. And because I know you were there's very few women firefighters. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, when I kind of fell into firefighting back in 1989, I became a firefighter, and in the San Francisco Fire Department, when I got in, there were 15 women, and there were 1,500 men. So I often didn't see a woman for a long time, which was fine. I mean, the men that I worked with were smart and brave and interesting, but they certainly had never. Well, first of all, this back then, like basically their peers they had never seen women do anything physical before because they were, I was 26, they were usually older. And I was the first generation of Title IX, where, sports came into schools equally for girls as boys. And so, and I kind of understood why they were trepidatious about my possible strength, even though I was a Division I rower. Uh, what I could see that there was, yeah, it was a hard job, but I was definitely hyper fit and I was 5'10". I weighed 155 pounds. Like I could do stuff. But I also understood that. But what I didn't understand is why they didn't think I was brave. And that permeated, like when I was a firefighter, a lot of people would come up to me, and one of the first questions they would ask is, aren't you scared? And I was like, that of all the things you could ask me, like, why didn't you ask me, like, what was the most interesting, call you've had? Or what's the most recent big fire? Like, no, it was like the least interesting question to ask. Well, am I scared? Yeah, sure. Does that motivate me? No, not at all.
So on that, what was the most interesting call that you had?
I mean, interestingly enough, like running into fires suited my personality. We had once three greater alarms in 24 hours. That's kind of unheard of. That means buildings going up in flames, big flames three times in a 24-hour shift, which is now, I think, because of the new building codes and people don't smoke and drink as much as they used to, you're lucky to get a fire every month, maybe. I don't know if you're a firefighter. Um, but for me, the most interesting calls were always the medical calls, believe it or not, because I didn't have I felt like I had I understood how to be brave, but I think I tread the line between being efficient and accepted by my male peers and also compassionate on the job. And when you go on a medical call and you walk into someone's house that you would never otherwise walk into, and help someone at their most scary time of their life, they're really badly sick or hurt or shot or macheted. I mean, we worked with in gang violence. We worked I was also working during the height of the HIV epidemic. And so for me, the big test was less like how brave are you than how emotionally available can you be? Because a lot of the healing really comes from, believe it or not, from walking in and being like, I got this.
Mm, mm. you're a scuba diver. Talk about some of the experience you had looking for, searching for bodies. I found that
Yeah,
interesting
like
in the book.
I was on the rescue squad most of my career, which means we were responsible for rescues in fires, but also all these other, we had to rappel off bridges if someone was maybe or on off cliffs. Often people get stuck on cliffs, or we did surf rescues if swimmers got in trouble. And one of the other things we did is we were the scuba team for the fire department, and that meant looking for bodies often, sometimes guns, whatever might be in the water. And the thing about the bay, which people don't realize, is that it's pitch black, pitch black. So you don't see anything. So you basically are finning along the bottom of the bay, which is not that deep. And not only are you on the bottom, but you're covered in mud because there's probably like a couple feet of silt. So you have to get actually in there, which I guess it doesn't matter because you can't see anyway. But uh, the thing I write about in the Gutsy Girl is that you find out quickly that there was a lot of crabs down there and tiny, tiny crabs, and they all start crawling all over you. And at first, it's very unnerving, and then it's kind of comforting.
You have friends down there helping you out.
Yeah, you're like shopping cart, tire, big pylon, weird shoe. Again, you can't see anything. You're just feeling. And you're looking for a body, which is for a lot of us like a bloated body in the base. Like not, it's scary.
Yeah.
I'll admit it, it was scary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just am in awe of all the adventurous things you do. I mean, just there, firefighting, scuba diving. Talk about some of the others, because I know you're a pilot. Just share some of the other adventurous things you've done in your life and what you really love and enjoy, and kind of the thrill you get from them.
I being outside has always been really important to me. So finding an activity outside. When I was young, I always wanted to be like the first to do something because again, like that was our simplistic metric for how we could be sort of happy and fulfilled, like win or be the
Mhm.
first. So I was a whitewater rafter. I was part of a whitewater rafting team that did first descents around the world. And so we went to places, we did a lot in California, um, but we went to Australia and did one, Switzerland. I went to Siberia. Anyway, being the first was important. I went mountain biking through Bolivia and turned out no one had mountain biked and I was like, yay, I'm the first. That holds no interest to me anymore. Like I still want to find ways to be outside, but I've found that you don't have to travel all the way across the world to have an adventure. I was a paraglider, used to paraglide in Brazil and Mexico. No, you can do everything right here. The United States actually has some of the most amazing wilderness in the world. Um, and now, as I'm 61, and I still adventure. I fly a gyrocopter, which I recently learned, which is a small little open cockpit, like helicopter-like thing that looks like it doesn't fly, but it um, but most of my adventures are really small. Like I like getting on my paddleboard and just going out in the bay right here in the city for an hour with a friend, like and look around and see the wildlife.
hmm You have a lot of wonderful stories. Let's talk about your new book a little bit, where you talk about some of these
Great. Yeah.
adventures. So you have this one,
Oh yeah, and the
I-
paperback just came out.
oh, there you go.
They like to change the cover, I guess, to yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome. I mean, this shot right here on top of that, the wing walking is insane. So, yeah, talk about kind of the inspiration for this book and tell everybody a little bit about what they're going to get in that book.
The inspiration for that book actually was after the Gutsy Girl did very well, the book for middle graders and girls, and a lot of women read it. I got a lot of letters from women who read it. They were given it before they went on a adventure, or they were going to travel solo, or they had just been divorced, like any sort of inflection moment, someone gave them the book, which was really cool. But because it is a call for bravery in the face of and fun and
Hmm
exhilaration. So my publisher just wanted me to do another Gutsy Girl for women. And I was like, for my peers. And I was like, I don't really have anything to say to my peers. My life has been different. We're all different, but I don't think I lived a typical life. I'm like privileged, no kids, queer. I live in San Francisco, like on the coast. Just like I didn't think I had something to tell my peers. So, but one day I was surfing, and I'm not a good surfer, JJ. I'm really not. I'm a really good paddler, and I love being out in big, like stormy waves that I can never surf, just because I like being outside in that kind of a weather.
Mhm.
And I looked around, and there were all these men my age out there, but no women my age or older. There were a lot of men older, that as a lot older than me, like 75, surfing in big, cold winter swell. And I was like, where are the women? I know there's a ton who are so much better than me. Why aren't they out here? And I started to wonder, like, what's my own aging process look like? Like, I don't have anything to tell someone, but maybe I could go ask some questions. And so Tough Broad came about because I wanted to stay outside, but I started to wonder if that was really what I should do, because the messages that we get as women are kind of to start pulling back as we age and to stop being so physically active because of our bones and our brain, who knows what our brain's going to be like? We can't really make those decisions. I mean, there's a lot of really subtle messaging. And so it's really a quest where I went on adventures with women and all different adventures with women, all different ages older than me, and embedded a lot of science and research into the book about why getting outside is important and why picking an activity outside is so vital for us as we age.
Mhm. Talk about some of the individual people that you interviewed, because I found it fascinating. You have women ranging up to 93 years old, still out there doing amazing things and just the whole mindset that they have.
Yeah, I wanted to do a variety of outdoor activities that was kind of extreme, like base jumping, which by the way, I did not do. It was the only thing I did not do in the book. For those of you who don't know, base jumping is when you step off a cliff with a parachute and you free fall for however amount of seconds, and then you pull your chute and you land on Earth. It's considered basically the most dangerous sport in the world and all its permutations that they have now. But I didn't do it because my family was like, yeah, no, you're accident prone. Don't do it. But everything else, and again, I did a wide variety: bird watching, boogie boarding, sea kayaking. Yeah, so I started the book during the pandemic and I couldn't see anybody. So I started doing the research behind like being outdoors. And there is actually very little direct research about outdoor adventure and aging, or even kind of outdoor adventure. They do look at it with kids, how outdoor adventure improves their lives, but not for women. But I started to put together different research. And one of the things that struck me very early on were all the studies that show that the way we look at our own aging predicts how well we age.
Hmm.
So what that means is if you have a negative mindset about your own aging, you are more liable to have cognitive decline earlier, more liable to have a heart attack earlier. And if you have an optimistic view of your own aging process, you are happier and healthier and you live 7.5 years longer.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I've never heard of this and this is kind of amazing. But how do we get that positive mindset? Because women especially are given a very negative view of aging in this country.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
we basically lose all the currency that we get that we're valued for as we age. So our looks change, we're no longer able to have kids. Um, we're dropped in this gray area without a script. Men, I don't know what the process is why I didn't write the book. I wanted to include men too, but I felt like I was not the right person for that. But men could get a lot out of this book too, because it still applies. You
Hmm.
need a positive view of your own aging journey. But I saw that there were men out there, 75 years old, surfing in winter swell with me. They were trying to, either they were feeling or trying to feel very robust and vital and part of what was going on in the world, whereas women seemed to be pulling back. So I was like, yay, scientists, thank you for this research. It's amazing. But how do we get that positive mindset about our own aging journey? And what I really started to realize is when you go outside, you upend all those social messages about who you have to be because you can't be on a physical decline or a mental decline or boring when you're outside. And I found this over and over again that women, especially those I looked at women who stayed outside their whole life and women who picked up an outdoor activity later in life. And over again, I saw that doing that upended their expectations of themselves as they aged and opened up their life at 60, 70, 80.
Yeah. Is there anyone that stood out to you? I mean, well, I got to ask you about this one, the one on the cover. Tell me about the wing walking, because that just looks, I mean, talk about being scared, being terrifying. That would terrify me. But I want to hear about that process of the courage for
Let
them.
me ask you, let me just, because I want, can I tell you about the boogie boarders first?
Oh, please, yeah, tell me.
Yeah, because I heard about these boogie boarders in San Diego. They were a group of women, 60, 70, even in their 90s, who boogie boarded. And as a surfer, albeit a bad surfer, I kind of looked down on boogie boarding. And I was like, it's not really an adventure, but it'll get people outside. And by then, I had done enough research to realize that simply being outside is really important for our health, our blood pressure, our mindset. I mean, they've done a ton of studies on that too. Just being in nature changes everything, improves memory. I mean, I'd like to get into that after. But so I go boogie boarding. I'm like, this is going to be boring, but important because it's a kid sport.
Yeah.
So it's accessible to people who haven't been outside before. So I go and well, almost immediately, first of all, I notice how much fun everybody's having and how social everyone is. And one of the women walks up to me and basically tells me, Caroline, boogie boarding changed my life.
Mm.
And I was like, what? This kid sport changed your life? And what she said to me is, look at the big Pacific Ocean. Look how cold it is. Look at the wind. Look at how I'm making decisions on waves. Look how I'm helping everybody that I'm with have fun. What I saw is that she was upending her expectations of what society told her she should be at this age. And she was being fun, she was being brave, she was being physically vital. And it changed her perspective of herself and her future. And just through boogie boarding with peers 3 times a week. It was powerful, JJ. I was gobsmacked.
I believe it. Sometimes like you said, we get caught up in living this adult life or forgetting how to just play like that. I remember boogie boarding. My brother and I our first experience was actually in San Diego. We got our first boogie board my dad was on a trip. We lived in Nebraska and we were like, this is amazing. So sometimes going back and doing those things that we start out to bring back that playfulness.
Yeah, play. I did do research on play. I mean, it's something that first of all, it triggers a lot of brain activity, which of course, as we age, we worry about things like our memory.
Mhm.
And so play is really important for that. And we as adults, I think we think it's a luxury, but in fact, it's an incredible pharmaceutical.
Mhm.
Play is really important for us as we age, for not only our just emotional well-being, but our actual biology.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and how much do you think just the way our society is, so much emphasis on like the corporate world and, having a job and working hard, and then sometimes not putting as much importance on that adventurous activities and play.
Yeah, and not only that, actually sort of looking down on it as if it's
Mhm.
not something that sort of adds, but you must be frivolous or something. If this is something that's important to you, you're not interesting, it's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now tell me about the wing
Oh,
walking.
wing walking. So I went wing walking reluctantly, can I say? I'm a pilot. I think by the way, okay, what wing walking is when you get up out of the cockpit and you climb upon a wing. And I'm a pilot, and why would you get out of a perfectly good cockpit to climb up on a wing? But someone sent me this video of this woman who turned out she was 71, I think, at the time. And it was a video of her in a biplane, takes off, and then suddenly she's clambering up on the wing. And I realized I had to talk to her. So I gave her a call because I was interested in one-time adventures, like a skydiving adventure for, when someone says, I think I'm going to go skydiving, and how it actually can really change you, not just emotionally, but biologically. Like it actually has impact. So I thought, wing walking, that's perfect. I'm going to talk to Cynthia. And she told me, Caroline, you wouldn't believe the courage you feel when you first get up on that wing. And I was like, ooh, courage, that's important.
Mm.
For aging, we need courage and resilience like that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go do this. And so I did. I took a wing walking course and got in the plane, and then it's time. And I'm a terrible wing walker, by the way. I really did. I got tangled in the wires. We had practiced all morning, but I got up there and I strapped into the king post. So now you're standing on top of a plane, and then the pilot starts doing loops, barrel rolls, and hammerheads all across the sky. And I went from being the surliest wing walker to ecstatic.
Mm.
And when I landed, I was like, what was that? Like I knew adrenaline. I have had been chasing adrenaline a lot of my life, but there was something more than adrenaline that happened up there. And what I realized is that I had experienced awe.
Mm.
Because when you're up there being thrown about the sky, your brain can't really catch up to what's happening. And that's actually the definition of awe. Awe is when you're in the presence of something um, sort of mysterious, powerful. It inspires sometimes dread and fear, but wonder. And that's what I had. It was a beautiful day, and I was just being like catapulted through clouds, it felt like. And, uh, awe is something that we think of as a religious experience only, but it's recently really come into the mainstream as something that is really good for us and that we should be seeking in our everyday life. And I had never, ever, and when I say this book is a quest, I really mean it. Like I did not know what that awe was actually had been a big part of my adventures all along. I just didn't have a word for it. I just went like adrenaline, fun. And as I got older, awe was a bigger and bigger part of that. So I did some research on awe, and turns out, so they did this great study at UCSF, the memory care and aging, where they took people between the ages of 60 and 80, and they told them to go on daily walks, 15 minutes. And the only instruction was look at everything with childlike wonder, because that's what awe is, where things seem new. And over the 8 weeks, they saw all these metrics change in these people. Their inflammatory markers went down. That's a key. You want your inflammation down. Their blood pressure went down, and they self-reported as being less anxious and depressed. And so it turns out you don't have to wing walk. You can just walk, just childlike wonder. And the thing about being outside is it's such a surefire awe trigger because the big night sky, the Grand Canyon, a tall tree, a tiny butterfly, like all that inspires awe. And I think as we age, we're really primed to be awe-filled. And so that was a really huge chapter for me because I started to realize that that was probably one of my major motivators in life is seeking awe. Even when I
Mhm.
fly a gyrocopter, everyone thinks it's about adrenaline, but it's not. It was about, oh, that beautiful sky. Oh, look at those birds. Look at the whales I see below me. Yeah, so all they found is actually really good for us.
Yeah, I love that. Talk about, because I know the gyrocopter was a different experience for you as well. Like being a pilot it wasn't so easy right at the beginning when you were learning, right? Some of the feelings and the emotions that came up with that. Because I think as we do get older, we are more trepid about like trying new things, or that fear seems to hold us back a little bit more. Or, so talk about that experience you
Yeah,
had.
not just fear. We just have a belief that, old dogs can't learn new tricks. But in fact, it's not true. First of all, our brain, and there used to be science that said our brain, stopped growing at like after teenagerhood. But we all know, I think, now that there's such thing called brain plasticity, where the brain can continues to grow. If it's injured, it'll find new areas to kind of light up in order to circumvent the injury. It's really, it's plastic. It just keeps adapting, and you really want that as we age because obviously our brain is something that we worry about. So it turns out learning something new is one of the best ways to start really stimulating your brain. And so I decided that I too would learn something new. And I went and learned a gyrocopter, which is a flying machine. And I had been flying since I was about 20 different things. So I was a paraglider pilot and I flew Cessnas. Then I flew hang gliders with motors. And then I was like, ooh, I'm really obsessed with this interesting looking helicopter thing. And they're all open cockpit, they're all experimental planes. Um, and yeah, it was interesting because the woman who taught me turned out there's hardly anybody that flies gyrocopters and hardly anybody that teaches them. But I found Britta Penka, who's 55, and she's like, oh, women are great students and older women are great students for two reasons. First of all, it's not that you can't, I love this part. She's like, it's not that your brain can't learn new things. It's just so full of
Oh,
life experience, which was such a great take
yeah.
on, maybe learning a little slower. I was like, I'm going to just throw out stuff I don't need in the brain to make room. And in fact, I was actually kind of a better student than I had been because I didn't have that swagger and bravado of youth and that sort of everything will come easy. I was like, it's not going to come easy, and that's okay. And I'm willing to work for it. I asked more questions because I wasn't afraid of looking dumb, like you are when you're. And I think I was a better student. I think I learned better, not necessarily faster, a total average as usual, but really it sunk in. And but there were things that were different. The controls are different. The controls are actually the opposite of all the what I had been flying before. So it was really clear how muscle memory and just really just a lot. I'd been 20 years of flying hang gliders with motors called trikes.
Yeah.
And it just like, so I had to undo that. But once it happens, and the journey is so enlivening. And I interviewed this woman who learned to swim at a later age. And her name was Vijaya Srivastava. She learned to swim at 68. And she said to me that once she learned to swim, she realized, what else can I do? So it kind of wasn't just the swimming journey that was cool, and it was, but it opened up this idea of like, ooh, I am full of potential. I'm not shutting down at 68. So when I met her, she was 74, and we went swimming together. And it was so inspiring to see her. She said that since swimming, she had started a walking practice, yoga, and people said she looked better, she was more confident. It was powerful.
Were there any other discoveries that stick out to you in the process of either through interviews or just your own journey as writing another book?
I mean, so many. The biggest one I think is I went bird watching. So bird watching again, obviously I got schooled all the time about my definition of adventure as being it had to be, over the top adrenaline. You had to be kind of scared for your life. Like, no. I went bird watching and again thought, never been bird watching. Went and I met Virginia Rose, who is in a wheelchair. She's been in a wheelchair since she was 14. And so the reason I wanted to go bird watching is I thought, okay, this is again like boogie boarding. It's accessible to people with many different physical limitations and financial limitations. We think of outdoor adventure as being exclusive, but it's not. The outdoors is right there. Even if you're in a neighborhood that's very, very urban, there's a tree, there's something, even from your porch, you can see birds. So I wanted to go bird watching. And if Virginia Rose could do it in a wheelchair, then most of us could. But I was like, bird watching, same thing. Not that interesting, but it'll get people outside. And I found out that bird watching is an adventure because it was a quest to find a bird. There was the anticipation of an adventure. There was the exhilaration when we saw a bird, and it was very physically vital because we went on a bird-a-thon, which meant I ended up walking and Virginia wheeled 6 miles. And so, yeah, I really realized that adventure is your adventure. I think people can get intimidated by this idea of, oh my God, outdoor adventure is good for me, but I'm I don't want to base jump. Like I just don't want to. And I'm like, I feel you. Don't base jump.
Mhm,
Don't wing walk.
mhm.
Go do whatever activity offers exhilaration, physical vitality of some sort. Could be just walking.
Mhm.
Uh, exploration, like pushes a little bit of your boundaries. And you're on an adventure. So that was one of the big takeaways that, our pick your adventure and make sure it's outside because there's adventures you can have inside. People have asked me like book clubs and book clubs, learning a language, all that. Yes, but here's what I found is that there's basically five pillars to healthy aging. So it's community, novelty, health. I'm going to forget one. It'll come back to it. Health. Uh, and I added to that. So the one I can't remember, which will
Mhm.
come to me. Um, those four you can see in all these studies. We need community, we need novelty, we need health, we need that other thing. And I added, we need a positive view of our own aging. So those five things. Well, guess what? You can join a book club, amazing, community, novelty, but not the outdoor the vitality, the health part. And same as a gym, like that gives you health, but doesn't give you necessarily like novelty or community. I don't know.
Mhm.
Picking an outdoor activity gives you all five of those.
Mhm. Love that. And what has your adventure been like as a career as an author? Kind of the ride that you've been on with that choice.
I've been really lucky. I've about to publish another book. So I've in all, if you count that one, I've published 8 books, which is, I mean, really amazing. I found a writing community called the Writers Grotto here in San Francisco very early. And that was seminal because I had people who were doing the same weird thing I was, like being in our pajamas at a weird time. We actually ended up forming an office space so that we could kind of act like we had a real job because no one thinks you have a real job when you're a writer.
Yeah.
But in fact, we are. And I've had many failures. I mean, I have, written at least 2 novels and one nonfiction and one children's book and a lot of half books that have been rejected.
Hmm.
So, it's been a wild ride, but not always a good one. And I have been in, the halls of the grotto, like weeping quietly after like one book just has to be given up on. And people are like, no, keep at it. You're gonna do it. And yeah, sure enough, I
Mhm.
did.
And how did you find that gumption or that faith to just keep moving forward and get published?
It's not even, you kind of don't even look for an emotional equivalent. It's just a physical labor. You just have to put a word on a page and then another word and then another word. And so you don't have to even believe in yourself to do that. So you're not waiting for the right emotional state. You're just doing it. I know that sounds so facile, but yeah, you're just doing it. And I found that I would try to write the book only I could write because I'm proud of my writing, the way my writing has changed and gotten better. But, there's amazing writers out there and there's amazing stories out there. Everyone has a story, by the way. It's just, can you tell it? Um, and so I just would try to write the book that only I could write. And usually that meant it was sort of based on my experience as an outdoor adventurer. Uh, but they're not really about me. Like people would be like, I'll realize that I've written about 6 memoirs. And that sounds so narcissistic and self-involved, but they're not memoirs. They're just, I am a vehicle through which all these other ideas come through, I hope. Um, and yeah, so I found the niche that probably no one else can really write about.
Do you keep yourself on a structured writing routine or what's your process like?
I so for my last book where when Tough Broad came out, it took up a lot more. I'd already sold another book, but it took up a lot more time than I thought, which was great. It was really well received. So I was constantly doing things and I couldn't put my mind to my next book. And so suddenly there was only 3 months to write it. And so I just set my alarm for 5:30 every morning and I would get up and write it. And
Mhm.
again, it's just like, so in general, I don't have a word count that I do. I have a how many by when. Like I definitely do have like I need to have the rough draft done by this date. Has to be super clear, because I think a lot of people have a murky idea, like I'm writing a book and it's going to be finished. No, if you want that book finished, I think, this is my opinion, you set a date and you make a title and you say you can do it in partitions, like I'm going to have half of it done by then. But you really need those really clear guidelines, because otherwise I think we can sort of be fuzzy. And you know, I used to ride horses when I was young, and my mom used to say, you have to look where you want to go on the horse. And I didn't really understand what, like, oh, because the horse just magically understands when you're riding. If you look, then it just like it's some sort of magical ESP. No, it turns out that when you're riding and you look where you want to go, your whole body gives signals to the horse where you want to go. So you're actually you're telling it the whole time, but you don't even realize it. And that is a truism that I use in my life. Like, look where you want to go, because everything will be turned towards that.
I'm going to remember that one. I love that visual of the horse. Yeah, that's great. Well, what now, moving forward after this, what's next for you? Do you have your eyes set on more books or new adventure, or what's up next?
I'm about to fly my gyrocopter from Salt Lake City, Utah, over Moab, Escalante, Bryce, and Zion, and the Sierras back home. It'll probably take 5 days
Oh, gorgeous.
in an open cockpit, tiny, tiny thing above huge mountains and big winds. It's going to scare me in all the right ways, but it's also going to be exhilarating
Mhm.
and full of awe. So
Are you going to hit some great camping spots in between, like on along those stops, or?
sadly, I have to land at little airports, and then if I can't find like a nearby place to stay, I will probably sleep. I was talking to my gyro partner. He's flying it over, and I'm flying it back. This is the way we do our cross countries, and I was like, "Have you? We could roll out our sleeping bag like Saint-Exupéry did under the wing of his plane." And he's like, "It doesn't have quite the resonance when you have this tiny little rotor blade." I was like, "Oh yeah, it doesn't have quite the romantic appeal."
Oh.
So yeah. So no, it'll
Oh.
be just really kind of seeing it from the air, which I once likened to like hiking through the sky, which is what it's like.
Oh, oh, that sounds gorgeous. It's a beautiful part of the country. Oh, well, tell everybody where they can get a copy of your book and how they can follow along and keep up with all your adventuring.
Yay. Well, The Gutsy Girl just came out in paperback along with Tough Broad. Actually, it's about to come out May 13th, next week. I'll be flying during that time somewhere over Moab. Um, and so you can get both anywhere at your favorite independent bookstore, or you can go on to my website, which is carolinepaul.com, and click on all the little buttons there and get a book for your mom and your daughter at the same time. And who knows, they could probably both read each. So
I think they definitely. We got both two here in Oregon, but and I'm already getting this one's gonna go to my yeah there. Oh, you're sure. I already thought I was like I'm gonna go through this one to my niece because she just turned 13, and I
oh,
just
good.
love it'd be great for her to fill out because I love with the Gutsy Girl that you also have it's very interactive. There's different at the end of some chapters where you can, like you have us journaling and writing like your own. I love that interaction thing with it. So that's a lot of fun. And
There's
then
journaling, there's lots of graphs, there's lots of, yeah, it's a fun book. It's definitely, there's some flow charts.
yeah, yeah, it's great. And this one I just love too, all the different ages. My mom was a PE teacher and she raised us to be very athletic and she's always had this wonderful group of women and they're in their 70s and 80s right now. And
Ooh,
yeah, you maybe have to they're right up your alley. Like they always do. They meet once a year and they always do, if it's in Colorado or, Arizona, different fun activities. So I've just always found that they were all teachers and the fact that they still get together and do all this like fun adventuring things are just incredible. So
that's amazing, JJ. So both you and I had this subliminal message from our mothers, because my mother, who picked up bicycling at 62, was this very, so I didn't realize it at the time because I was her kid, so I didn't look at her that way.
Yeah.
Was a message that basically said, oh no, your older aging is going to be full of adventure and new things. So we were a little step ahead of the subliminal message of a positive view of our own aging journey.
Yeah. Thank you, moms, right?
Yeah, yay. Yay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I love talking to you. I just love what you're doing for women and girls everywhere, and I just
Love
find
what
it
you're doing. Love
fascinating.
what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, great luck on your adventure next week. I can't wait to follow along with it and hear all about it. All
Great.
right, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for following along, listening. You can follow us everywhere at TOMGIRL, wherever you get your podcasts, or please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you here next time. Get out there.